homelessness among people who have been in the prison system is absolutely insane. And then you look at the statistic of military veterans that also have prison uh, and felonies that become homeless. It is very sad data. So thank you. Ayana, would you like to introduce our second speaker, Andre?
Next, we have Andre Fields. Andre is a founder and managing director. Interesting enough, Andrew is a father, and is the father of 4 children, but also has 4 degrees focusing on psychology. Psychologist studies emotional and connective cognitive
Cognitive.
cognitive behaviors to help improve progress and behaviors. Welcome on, Andre.
Thank you, Ayana. Good morning, everyone. My name is Andre Fields, and I'm here kind of representing myself, but also Grand Rapids Community College. I work there as an associate professor and a psychologist. I'm also an author of several books that relate to American racism and how it impacts the psychological functioning of various populations in this country. I'm also a founding director of a mentoring program for Black males. And over the years, most of my research has focused on, once again, the psychological impact of American racism. We all know American racism is a powerful force or a powerful energy in our culture. And whether you're Black or white or Hispanic or Asian, it's, at some point or another, it has an impact on some of our thinking, some of our emotions, and some of our behaviors. Um, I usually try to sum up my background pretty simply, and say I had a stereotypical African American experience, meaning I experienced a lot of the uh, struggles that a lot of Black Americans encounter in this country. When I say struggles, I mean poverty, fatherlessness, homelessness, violent neighborhoods, underfunded schooling systems, things like that. And so when you see a whole group of people having a certain negative life outcome, at some point as a psychologist, we're trained to ask, is it because this group of people are genetically inferior, or is there something wrong with the environment? And so, of course, I'm going to, I'm going to talk, and I'll talk about a little bit about this later, but, there are a lot of environmental challenges that Black people face because of systemic discrimination. And when I say systemic discrimination, I'm talking about the intentional taking away or withholding of access, resources, opportunities, things like that. And to me, we hear the word racism a lot, but the word discrimination to me is more important. Um, what I have found is racism is basically, it's like a noun, or it's just a thought. It's a preconceived notion that you're superior than another person because of the color of their skin and the color of your skin. Discrimination is much more dangerous because now you're actually affecting other people's lives. So it's one thing to have a negative thought about a person, but once you begin to, again, take away their resources, their opportunities, their access, now you're complicating that individual's life, as well as people who look like that individual, in this case, African Americans. And so a lot of times people say, why does systemic discrimination exist? If you look at all major sectors of society, systemic discrimination is there, whether it's in the education system, the financial system, criminal justice system, the healthcare system, housing, you name it. And so when people ask me, why does it exist so much? Why is it so insidious? Um, the latest research I read or came across, 53% of white Americans admit to having an aversion towards Black Americans in this case. And so there are approximately about 225 million white Americans. If you take 53% of that number, there's about 115 million people in America, or white Americans, who say they have a disdain of sorts towards Black Americans. And so what happens is these 115 million people, they are the people who wake up, hit their alarms, and they go to work. They go to, they put on their badges and their uniforms and they drive around, they profile Black people. They profile job applications in human resources. They give Black Americans higher interest rates for car loans, for home loans. They're more likely to reject Black people. So long story short, in every system, it's like you've got, let's say, just 7 sectors of society. Those 115 million people are somewhere within that system treating people unfairly. And so it's like a white tribalism is what I call it sometimes. And it's almost like a warfare of resources. And the purpose of that white tribalism is essentially white domination. And so when you live in a society where you're a minority and then you have a majority class who has, I guess, kind of, you know, held the power in this country for generations, but then also have unfairly distributed resources, that produces a lot of psychological, I guess, taxation. And a lot of it has to do with race-related stress. When I say race-related stress, all that means is because of the color, it's the stress I experience because I feel like something can be taken away or withheld from me because of the color of my skin. And so with that race-related stress comes a lot of anxiety, depression, frustration, powerlessness, hopelessness, you name it. And so this is not only historical, this systemic discrimination, but it's modern day as well. You know, you can just review statistics and you'll find, for example, white males are more likely to drive around with drugs and weapons in their car. Yet, disproportionately speaking, Black males are more likely to get pulled over. So that's just an example of how systemic discrimination makes it harder for some people and easier for others. And that's why in America, a lot of Black people would tell you that they have a love-hate relationship with this country. Most Black people want to be patriotic, but it's almost like, it's like you have a love-hate relationship with a parent who was abusive. Even though that parent was abusive, was unfair to you, you still love them. But sometimes you don't love them. And it's kind of, I always use this analogy of, I look at America as a parent. And she has 2 twins. She has a Black boy and a white boy. And so the Black boy, she doesn't treat so well. She doesn't affirm him. She doesn't nurture him. She tells him, why even try? You're never going to make it. You're going to be just like your loser uncle, etc. She tells her white child, you know, you deserve to be a leader in this country. You have all the abilities and capabilities necessary to be successful. Just work hard and you'll get there. Then what that parent does, she sends those 2 little boys out into the world, and you can predict when they come back home, you know, in the course of several years, you can predict who's more than likely to be successful. And then just like a bad parent, America does the same thing. It says, well, she tells her Black son, who you became and what you decided to do has nothing to do with the way I parented you, because I raised you in the same house as your brother. And so America, just like a bad parent, doesn't take responsibility for the fact that it hasn't been fair to its Black citizens. And so I like to call it white America's burden. And this is kind of white America's burden. White America has this cognitive dissonance that it deals with. It says on one hand, yep, racism exists. I know it's not fair, but you still should be able to thrive just as well as me. In a superstructure that is strategically designed to hold you down. And so what I would say in closing, when I think about what needs to take place to make things better, I try not to blame. Sometimes I blame the victim, sometimes I blame the system. If you ask me whose fault it is or who is to be blamed for Black America's struggles socially, I'm going to blame American racism and systemic discrimination. At the same time, I'm going to hold Black America responsible for working and fighting to get out of that situation and improve their personal situations as a people. And so it's just like the parent. If you ask me whose fault is it that Mother America's Black son didn't do so well in life at the end, I'm going to blame the mother. But at the same time, I'm going to sit that Black boy down and say, look, I know life was messed up. You had a terrible parents, but you got to make it happen. and I'm gonna try to support that person. And I think that's what I'm saying when I say I hold both responsible. You know, I blame the system, but I hold Black Americans responsible. So on that note, I'm done with my tangent.
That was awesome, Andre. I feel like
Thank you.
you
Thank you.
provided a lot of knowledge and wisdom. I think Ayana has a question for you.
Since you was talking about this, I thought, have you ever been treated like this?
Oh yeah, plenty. Yeah. So it's just basic stuff. I can give you two vivid examples. So I live in East Grand Rapids, and I'll give you two examples. I've experienced it once, and my son did. So my son used to play baseball when he was in middle school, and we never really let him walk around the neighborhood because he's a taller guy, he's dark skinned, and so just one of the things we say, hey, we only let you out when we're with you. And so I don't know if you guys know about the coupon books that people sell for their teams. Well, the very first time we laid him out in the neighborhood to sell those booklets, someone called the police and accused. They say he was trying to break in their house. So 3 state troopers surrounded him and made him prove that he lived on Cascade Road. And so he told me how scared he was, and he remember saying he felt like he was going to collapse. So for one, that's a very traumatic experience for a kid to have grown men with guns surrounding him. But two, it was a race-based situation. Me myself, I've also had the same thing happen in my own neighborhood. Typically, this is my ex-wife, not to put my business out here, but she will always say, Andre, don't go out at night. One day we had a little argument. I decided to go out and take a walk, put on my headphones, and the exact same thing happened. State troopers like converged on me and said that someone said I was looking in people's cars. I've been accused of stealing from stores. I've been like literally pulled over and made to show a receipt. There's a notion that Black people have, or we're taught as Black people, that we have to do twice as much in order to keep up with the rest of society. And that's the Black person burden. I talked about the white American's burden, but the Black American burden is, in order for me to keep up with you, I have to be superior at something. White America is set up to where the average white man can end up having a good life. But in order for a Black male to even look average, he has to be superior, or he has to work doubly hard. And so I don't always share this in this type of platform, but if you know anything about working for a college, there's a process called being tenured. And so basically the way tenure works is, if you receive tenure, it's basically guaranteed employment. And it's basically you having to prove that you are an asset to the college. And so I was denied tenure. And so with that comes is the automatic termination of my position. However, because I worked so hard, the higher ups overturned it. And so one of them said, if your portfolio wasn't as good as it was, there would have been nothing they could do to advocate for me. But because I've been working so hard over the years, that helped me. So what I would tell you, Ayana, is do your best. And you have to work hard. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in people. You have to believe in your future. And that'll get you through, because you're more than likely to experience racism, especially if you're going to be running for president one day. You're going to experience racism, and you can't let it disempower you, and you can't believe the lies. There's a lot of negative perspectives in society, but if you don't want to let those negative perspectives get inside your brain, so every day you have to talk positive to yourself, because again, you will experience racism running for president. What I would tell Black people to think about is us becoming more engaged, more united, more supportive, and more strategic about creating our own community. And with that being said, those are my closing words.
Do you want me to just jump right in?